you first get interested in learning about woodwork? Who was the first one in the family?
Back in 1928.
Before you go any further on that, say building up the front house, we were living in the back. There was no home in the front. It's just a
Well, that
vacant
shouldn't
lot.
be connected with it, though.
For sure. How he dug that foundation by hand. He dug that foundation by hand.
Pick an axe.
Pick an axe in the dead of winter.
It was frozen.
Frozen.
But that shouldn't
Frozen dirt, clay. He was picking it, putting it in the wheelbarrow, and I'd wheel it out.
All right, now, how did you get to move out there in the first place?
Well, that comes from way back now. That comes from the east. See, from
Actually, you want to know some of the story and then get into this. There's a lot involved in our life. A lot involved. Now, my mother raised so many children. Now, I came from Italy with my sister Jean. In 1910, we sailed on a boat to Perugia, Teresa. We took the boat the 10th of July. We arrived here, but it took 29 days on a boat of Perugia.
Do you remember that?
Yes. The name of the steamship was Perugia, and it took 29 days to get here.
What made them decide to leave Italy in the first place? That's the question I've always wanted them to answer.
Oh, that's a beautiful question. My father wasn't liked by my grandfather on my mother's side. He wasn't liked at all.
Why not?
Well, he was considered a playboy, you know.
I guess so. How many kids did he have?
We just died, my sister.
Oh, at that time.
Yeah. So he took sick. So he tried to get well. He went to a physician, and the physician says you're going to die within the year. So he decided there's something wrong with this climate. So he says, I'm going to go to America. So he left first. He left in 1909. 1909, he worked the whole year here to accumulate money to get my mother, I, and my sister across. But for him to come here, my mother had to sell all her linens.
her hope chest.
Her hope chest she developed in her youth, she had to sell it all to get the fare to come to America. And that took a price. So the first job he got was working for Central City, for the city.
The car line, the tracks, working on the tracks.
So he worked for the city, and he had to install these sewer lines. Okay? So he had to dig ditches, and that was supposed to be a good pay, you know. So he raised enough money to get us across. So a year later, we came. My mother, I, and my sister on that boat. But my father came first. Worked a year.
What year do you think that was?
1909, my dad, alone. And he lived with my aunt, Galika, the whole year. They put up with him for a year. Then when he got us across, we lived on
Cedric?
Townsend and Milton Avenue, I think, somewhere around in there. Townsend and Milton.
Did you hear that?
On a basement. In the basement. A basement flat. And we lived there probably 2-3 years. But my second year after I came, my first accident, I broke a store window with a broom. The day after my dad took us to the theater to see a what do you call it now, these
Vaudeville?
It was a vaudeville, but it had to be
Burlesque?
balancing act, you know.
It was a vaudeville act.
Balance. It wasn't movies. It was acting on a stage, and they were balancing things, you know. So this guy's balancing things like this, you know, and I took the broom and I wanted to balance that on a sidewalk, you know. And I broke a store window and I got this eye cut open, 2 stitches in there. That was my first accident. A year after we got here, my mother pulling her hair. And at 6, they decided to get my tonsils out, and that's 63 years ago. They didn't know too much about ether at that time, so they overdosed me. They were telling me to count to 10 till I would sleep, you know. And here I'm counting to 10, I don't know how many times. Count again, count again. And they were pouring this ether on me, and I got ether burns. Of course, it didn't develop until I got out. About 10 days later, they rushed me to Children's Memorial's Hospital from a Sunday school. We attended that.
You might have got into convulsions or something, huh?
No, I was turning colors. And this Sunday school teacher said, there's something wrong with this boy. She grabbed me, rushed me through it. Then she reported that she took me to the hospital. And they found that I had ether burns. The first, of course, the operation was done at St. Joseph Hospital. The second treatment, Children's Memorial Hospital. You know the 2 hospitals. I think you know the 2 hospitals.
See, I didn't even know that story.
Well, I gave my mother a lot of headaches. I had all kinds of accidents. So I was accident prone, you know.
Flipped on a truck, and slipped off.
We used to war with house bricks in the old neighborhood. Milton Avenue there. I got clobbered, I got my forehead hit by a house brick.
Craigner's.
Kids.
With
They
the
were
Craigner's.
gangs, you know.
Craigner's.
You spoke English at that time?
Oh yeah, I learned pretty fast. I was going to school already, you know.
Hanson Park.
I was 6 years old. No, it's still in the old neighborhood.
The old neighborhood.
Yeah. We moved out of the old neighborhood, I was 7 years old, maybe 8. But in this story here, first we must connect the conversion from Catholicism to Protestantism. Now, Aunt Alika and Uncle and all, they thought my mother was nuts, see? The authorities says, no, she's sick. So they took all his children away and brought us in a home. So we were in an orphanage for
Did you go there?
a few months.
I didn't even.
It was I, Gene, and you were an infant. You didn't know about that.
That was 1913, so. Must
No,
have been
that was
1914 or 15.
No, not that late. No, we were in Hanson Park at that time. It was after this tonsil operation. So I could have been 8 years old. Let's see, 7 and 8, 15. Yeah, it could have been 1915.
How did the kids get back? How did Grandma and Grandpa get the kids back?
Well, after my mother supposed to have recovered, took us back. And a couple of years later, just so there wouldn't be too much connection, I met Galino, and they started this new church work in Hanson Park. But before we went there, we used to ride the Grand Avenue line. Boy, and I thought it was a ride. From Townsend there
Into Hanson Park.
to Hanson Park, I thought it was forever, you know. I thought it was forever. So after a year or so of this kind of transition, going back and forth with this church started in Hanson Park Italian work, my father connected with Galino. They started this church, then we decided to move. So we moved on Mango Avenue. That's how we got to Hanson
But
Park.
the house wasn't there yet, was it?
No,
No.
we were at the tracks. We were living at
First,
Mango on at the tracks.
First we didn't go on at the track.
No?
No. We lived on 5717 Grand Avenue. That was next door to the gas station.
Oh, yeah, right.
And we lived there about a year. But as this church got started, it didn't start at the theater there. It was a theater. It started close to the railroad. That building broke down. They tore it down.
Yeah, later on.
Yeah. When Yellow Cab, Yellow Coach bought the spot, they used it for parking lot. They tore all the homes from the railroad to Dickens Avenue. They tore all those homes down.
Yeah, but we were living right in the tavern there, upstairs from the tavern.
No, first floor.
First floor?
Yeah, first floor.
Because it was a tavern by the railroad track there, see?
They call them saloons then.
Saloons at that time.
But it was closed. It wasn't used. The whole building was abandoned. So my dad decided to move in there. He didn't even know the owner.
He just moved in.
Just moved in, that's all. He says, when the owner comes, we'll pay him. So we lived there a few months. And in the meantime, this church got started. And because actually the church got started in Rizzoni's house, the back house. Not at this.
Mm-hmm. No, in the back house.
We lived there.
Yeah.
But over here, the church was started in Rizzoni's house. Then the church work got too big, and they bought a theater that was built and was used only 2 times as a theater, and they closed down. The man died. And they bought the place for $2,500. Now, after they bought that, and this church work started, and the function was pretty well going, Rizzoni decided, says, Brother Agnello, you're a nice man. We like you. We want you to have this house. We want to sell it to you. And my father bought that back house, nothing in the front, just the back house. And the basement was used as a animal stall. The second level was used as an apartment. Then they had an attic. So this, my dad converted so that he was able to raise a family in that small house, you know. But in the meantime, the war was over, the First World War. 1918, the war was over. Pete was born. Don was born. You already grew up. Josie was born in the old neighborhood. She was the last born there. I had another brother named Paul there, too. But he died before moving to this side of in Hanson
How
Park.
old was he when he died?
He was an infant. His name was Paul. So later on, Paul was born in Hanson Park. They called him Paul, too, because, well, in memory of Paul. Now, as life went on,
Here's what I want to find out. Did you keep in contact with your grandparents in Italy?
my mother she was illiterate. My mother was illiterate. My father was illiterate. So the only letter writing was some of the people that he would meet that knew how to write, that would bother to write for him. But most of the time he would go to my uncle's house. And they were more literate. They had somebody right there. So he would make contact with my grandfather. My mother became, you want to put it down at this point? My mother, she lost her mother, my grandmother, at the age of 6 through an accident. My grandfather and my grandmother and my grandfather were riding on a horse from the city to the country. And as they were passing, they had to go through a wooded road. But as they were riding along, my grandmother's horse stopped suddenly and she flew off the horse. And as she landed on a dead man's body that was just killed. And that drove her insane. Of course, she didn't live long. Within the year, she died. The fright, you know.
That's our grandmother.
Yeah, Ma's mother.
Yeah.
There was an accident with Passai, too.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. There was an uncle there. He was smoking. And the hot ash fell on the horse's back while he was smoking. And as the horse got wild because of the hot ash, his foot got caught on the stirrup by the saddle. And the stirrup got caught in the, what do you call that?
On his heel.
The stirrup is on the heel.
Yeah.
But he got caught on that saddle part, you know, where you put your foot in. You rest your foot rests on
That's the stirrup. That's the stirrup.
That's the stirrup? No, the stirrup is that part that you cause the horse to move.
No, that's a spur.
Spur? Well, anyway, that spur got caught in the stirrup. And the horse dragged him. And he is hitting the ground and just till it killed him, you know. That was Uncle. His name was Uncle, what was his name? It was Uncle Dominic. I was Joseph. I can't remember that uncle. Uncle Dominic.
Phil? Philip.
What were your aunt's names?
Well, there was an Aunt Teresa. On my father's side was Aunt Teresa. Aunt Jenny. Teresa was my grandmother's name. I can't recollect that part. I can't recollect the names too well. Well, anyway, my grandmother died within a year. And she was my mother was only 6 years old when she died.
And she was left with
her mother. And she was the only daughter. She was the only girl. She had 4 brothers. Now those 4 brothers lost contact with my mother because of, should I say, fear. They didn't want to lose Grandpa to come here. He was supposed to come. He loved my mother that much, you know. He was supposed to come and leave Italy. So they stirred up a little.
Yeah, but wait a minute. You're talking about Grandpa. Huh? He got married again, and don't forget that.
No, he never married anymore. Grandpa never married. Oh, you mean, yeah, she had a stepmother.
Sure, she had a
And
stepmother.
The stepmother was pretty rough with,
With Mom.
yeah, she was
Yeah.
pretty rough with her. So, they didn't hit it too well. That's part of the hate, you know.
And they were well-to-do, though. Ma was their parents.
No, they weren't well.
They had orchard or orange.
That was all on consignment. Yeah.
Well, she was pretty
Like-
well off, though.
They were hired to take care of her. She was more like
They were
a
peasants.
peasant.
They worked the land, someone else owned
Yeah.
the land.
Somebody else owned the land. My father, the same thing. He took care of the orchard. My grandfather, Frank, he took care of the orchard. But my father used to take this fruit and vegetables, and he would peddle it in different towns. That was his work. He made his livelihood that way. So actually, he was a peddler.
Yeah.
And what kind of house did we have over there? Do you remember?
No, it's something that's
Actually, it was lime coated. You know, you know how
Like
they
a stucco,
how the
like a
Spanish
stucco.
use the stucco. Well, it's in that order. And it was sort of a two-flat building.
Did they have room separations there then?
Oh yeah.
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 Like bedroom separate from the kitchen.
But when they were doing the plaster work and they were preparing this plaster, as a kid, I'd go there and eat this, you know. I was eating the lime.
I wonder why he didn't kill you.
I tell you, I get into a mess all the time. But we had fig trees, and there I'd load myself with figs. But all this within 3 years, and we left, you know. Within 3 years, we were in the United States.
Well, and how did they pay for the trip over here? Who paid for the trip? They paid for it?
Who?
Your parents paid for the trip over here?
I paid for that.
Pop paid. It wasn't my grandfather that paid for it, because my grandfather, on my father's side, he was 17 years old. He lost him, and grandmother was a few years after, and she died. So actually, there were two.
Orphans.
They're like orphans, you know. My mother still had her father. He lived to 78. He lived to 78. But he was supposed to leave Italy and come here and live with. My father wanted him, but my uncles kept him there. And this binding here caused the separation. The fear of losing Grandpa and all that, on my mother's side. On my father's side, he didn't have nobody.
Well, once they came here, and Grandpa was working, and he paid for everybody else to come over, he moved over there on the east side of the city.
Yeah.
Then, what kind of work was Grandpa doing? When did he start doing this mirror cutting or glass cutting?
His first job, when he came here, he was a ditch digger. That's all. He was digging.
Ditch digger.